Welcome back. This is Mim, and this is episode 2 of Extra Bases. In this episode, I wanted to talk about a few out of the park related items and then also address some viewer feedback. So, if you would, pull up a seat and we'll get to it. Thanks. So, first of all, my playthrough, when I first started it, I created a historical league. And so I thought the best thing to do was to call the save or the playthrough historical. But then the more I've thought about it with how I set up my minor league system and just the presence of a lot of fictional players, it's not accurate for me to call this a historical league. And there's some differences in the way the minor leagues are structured, so it's definitely not historical that way. So after thinking about it some more, I decided the best thing I can do is just put quotation marks around historical in all the thumbnails and all the titles of the videos. And from this point forward, I'll be more mindful of things like that. I'm still kind of new, and so if it misled anybody or was a dumb mistake to make, sorry about that. The next time I play a Cubs playthrough of this time period, I'll probably try to do with the normal minor league settings. I'll just use like the stock settings with the out of the park the wizard, like the create historical league. I'll just go through those and do the things the closest to history as I can make it with my knowledge of the settings. So just wanted to address that and say that's why there will be quotation marks over those from this point forward. Next, I'll go into my out of the park and pull up my spring training stats. And there's not much to show here. There's a pretty terrible stats. Hopefully we don't bat like this in the regular season, but we very well may. I'm kind of counting on it and expecting it, to be honest. But I don't pay much attention to spring training stats, so this kind of stuff, it's very it's unimportant to me. I just think of it like batting practice, the extended batting practice for these guys. And the main thing I care about is that they get a relatively even number of plate appearances. And I use the system that's described in that post. I mentioned this in a previous video. I will link it again in the description below. But that guy, he sort of sets it up a way, and he orders his daily lineup based on at bats. And it roughly works out to where players have very similar plate appearance numbers. There are some guys on the high end, like, for instance, Ryan Sandberg. I was trying to get him to pick up first base, and he's now a 50 rated first baseman, so it worked. But he did take a few more whacks at the ball because of it, because he was playing a lot more in the spring. There are guys like Doug DeCenzo who are just, I'm going to play him as a fifth outfielder for the first 2 months of the season, so he's not really going to be with our team long term. He's going to get sent back down to the minors when Chito Martinez comes up. So it wasn't that important for me just to have this guy get a lot of at bats. He's sort of like a borderline backup, a pinch hitter, pinch runner kind of a thing. He's not that important of a player. Gil Reyes is our backup catcher. He's not much of a batter. I did decide I'm going to start him against left-handed pitchers just in the regular season and let Manwaring take only right-handers. Not that Manwaring's a very good batter against right-handers or anything, but at least with Reyes' really weak bat, he might be able to do a little something against those left-handers. And then I'm using him at a frequency that is pretty much guaranteeing that Manwaring's always going to be rested every 6 to 8 games. You typically face a left-handed pitcher, so it's just sort of a way to passively ensure that Manwaring's getting enough rest in the regular season. And if he doesn't, Reyes subs in for him anyways. So that's that for the spring training. I just wanted to point out how that system does in fact pretty evenly distribute the at-bats. These could be more even, but like Chito Martinez, who's not even on this screen, he got 70-something at-bats, and some of these guys, like, I didn't mind them getting a little bit less because they're already seasoned veterans, and this is probably way more than you need to knock off rust. Like, I don't think you need anywhere near this many, but I just do it this way because this team is going to be awful anyway, so just let them take whacks at the ball when they can. So I did make a pitching change, so let me just throw that in real quick. This guy, we picked him up for Rick Sutcliffe at the very end of the season, or the spring training, I'm sorry. And he had already pitched 22 innings that spring. He didn't do well, but we're just going to use him. He's not anything great. We didn't have good choices in these spots anyways, so it's not like it's a real loss. This guy, he's not great either, but he's sort of getting at that age where, hey, I just throw him up in this role, because what we were going to do, we were going to have this guy Danny Pacheco just sort of pitch number 5, and he would essentially lose every game, very likely. But then I noticed his stamina was so low, so I was like, well, I'll just throw him in the bullpen as like an emergency long reliever, a spot starter kind of a thing. And this guy will get the call instead, and he's not really any better. But you never know. Like maybe these guys, maybe they can pitch 500. I doubt it, but they're here to kill time for 2 months until we call up Frank Castillo, and then one of these guys will go down into Pacheco's spot, and Pacheco will go back down to AAA, most likely. So that's that. That's the pitching change. Nothing really that important. And then, that's right. I can get into this. I had some viewer feedback. I really appreciate it. It's amazing to have people say, "Oh yeah, your audio sounds okay," or I watched this, or I made it through all these, or I had some people, just ask questions or make suggestions, and it's so helpful because obviously I'm still learning doing this, and just to know if like things sound okay and people are generally following along, you're not totally on the wrong track. I still know I have a ton of improvement to make, and maybe I never will get there as far as people that are really good at doing this. But it's still fun, and I'm still learning some things, so I appreciate that about it. This video, for instance, is kind of a test just to put some background music and see how the level is, and if it interferes with the voice, and maybe do some stuff with post-processing, where I throw these 2 audio tracks into Audacity, and I try to do some using an equalizer to make the vocals stand out a little bit more. I'm just testing some things and trying to learn these little things to make little improvements, but probably way more involved stuff than I need to be doing at this stage of anything, but it's still interesting. Anyways, I brought all that up because one of the people who contacted me was a guy on Steam. And I said, hey, can I say what your name is or whatever? And he said, I'll just say a viewer. So hopefully that guy, if he sees this, he realizes I'm talking about him. I'm sure he would. He mentioned, hey, you should get the mod where it fixes all the historical stadiums, because there are a lot of stadiums in the time period I'm playing that aren't in the game because they were like torn down, or the clubs use different stadiums now. So there is a mod. This mod right here, Major League Stadiums 1901 to 2019 by Silvam14. And I am subscribed to this mod, by the way, to that guy. It's just, this is Steam on my web browser, and I'm not logged in on this web browser to Steam. But the issue with me, I'm not a super fan. I don't know a whole lot about the Cubs or Wrigley Field even. Wrigley Field is a very old baseball park, but it's changed a lot throughout the different decades. Like, it still has a very cool historic charm, and it's a very special baseball park in my opinion. But there are things about it that change decade to decade, and it's almost imperceptible in some cases because the park's so old and it's been around for so long that, like, when gradual changes happen, people normally don't pick up on them until it's like suddenly a big glaring difference. And there are some big differences with it now compared to even 20 or 30 years ago. But I don't know about the dimensions. When I look in the and out of the park, let me pull that up. When I look at Wrigley here, and look at these dimensions, I mean, I still have to double check all this stuff and see what's different, and if it set them to be correct for 91, or if it is indeed wrong. Even if whatever, however that pans out, I'd still like to load that mod because there are so many other fields that don't show up in the game if you don't have that mod, and that is a problem. But um, I'm having trouble because I don't play the game through Steam and I'm playing it through Xbox Game Pass, and so my install files, it's a little bit different than if you just subscribe to a Steam mod. Like if you have a game through Steam and you subscribe to a mod in the workshop, it will sort of like load it into the correct folder, and it sort of is recognized by the game, and boom, then you load in the mod and you're good when you play that game. Like with RimWorld, I have no trouble at all. But for whatever reason, with Out of the Park, when I try to follow some of the guides and to do what you're supposed to do to get a mod running, every now and then I have I have issues. Like it took me a little while to get the face pack that I have running to work, and I finally did. But I'm probably still having the same kind of stuff where it's just a mistake I'm making as far as the where I'm trying to put the mod or how I'm trying to load it into the game. But eventually, I think I'll get it. But I did want to say, like, I appreciated the suggestion, and it's definitely something I want to do. And if I do get stuck, though, like if I just cannot figure out how to get this right, I might just play through the season. Again, this is not a real historical playthrough, anyways, at this point. And I'd hate to just sort of throw in the towel and do that, but there might be a point where I'm like, come on, I just want to play the game, and if I can't get that mod to work, I might do that, but hopefully I can figure it out. Normally I can figure stuff out like that, so it's not that big of a deal. But let me pull this up again. And so I appreciate that Steam contact contacting me and just talking. And he had a really cool. He was doing the Cubs too, and he has a cool like a mod where it shows the actual pictures of the players from that time period. I had seen some of the stuff about that on the official forums, but I could never figure out how to do it or how to get it. So that's another thing I'd like to do too. But the Wrigley Field, the baseball diamonds being correct comes first. One thing I'll say, ending this has been a little rambly. Sorry about that. But it's an interesting thing about baseball fields, and the guy on Steam even made this connection, and a lot of people understand it this way. Baseball fields are a little bit like golf courses, or if you think about it, maybe like a golf hole, like the way the holes are a little bit different on each course. Some of them have different traps. They have different unique characteristics that pose a challenge, pose opportunities. So baseball parks, and it's one of the quirky things about baseball that I love so much, is unlike other major sports, like you talk about American football or basketball or like soccer, football overseas. All those fields, the dimensions for the goalpost and for the court and all, like everything is measured out precisely. It's all like down to probably the eighth of an inch or whatever. Like there's probably just an enormous amount of standardization, and you're all on the same kind of playing surface. You're all on the same kind of playing field, and there might be little differences, but by and large, there's some uniformity. With baseball, the infield is all very meticulous, and that stuff has to be correct. But then there are sort of suggested guidelines. They are rules technically, like there are rules for the dimensions, like the minimum dimension down the right field line, the minimum dimension down the left field line, the minimum dimension from home plate to the center, the center field. All those things, there are some guidance on it from Major League Baseball, but it's not enforced. It's just incredible. All these because of historic reasons as well, like old parks like Wrigley or Fenway Park, like older parks. Some of them wouldn't conform to these standards anyways, and there's like the big green monster in Fenway, sort of like an answer to them having such a short left field line. So I bring all this up just because it's such a cool thing about baseball, and I do definitely want to switch Wrigley to be the correct dimensions, or at least a correct model as far as what you're seeing in the crowd. But Yeah, this is um, I forgot to bring this up and kind of mention the unique nature of baseball parks, so I didn't want to move on too quick. Um, all right, so next, in one of my videos, I talked about setting up a minor league system for this historical playthrough, and then a commenter named Tom KMB. He's also a viewer of like the Holdens, I think, of like pfholden and Mike Holden of Fake Sports Dynasties. And Tom, he said like, hey, I might do a similar time period. I'm just interested in baseball. I'm kind of new to it. I know some of the recent stuff, but not some of the stuff from the past. And so we talked back and forth a little bit and through comments. And then he mentioned that he might want to do the minor league system a little bit like how I did mine. And he might have some questions. Well, I was thinking about it, and it wouldn't be that hard for me. It'd probably only take like 10 minutes or something, where I could go in and I'll make a video just showing you what I did, but I will give you fair warning that that video, it might lead you astray. It might be the wrong settings. I might still be doing something wrong and I just don't realize it, but I can at least show you that video. And and then you can possibly like take or leave certain things from it. It might be a little bit of help, or it might be a hindrance. You never know. But it definitely would. This is one thing I'll say. It wouldn't be a tutorial because I'm just not concise enough. So you need to have like 10 or 15 minutes to kill, and to dink around with an out of the park. Like creating a game, just to sort of run through the steps with me and maybe get a sense of how that setting it up that way, what it's doing, and why I did it. Um, It'll make your playthrough not really historical though, because you'll have those fictional players. So that's a choice you'll have to make, and I'll try to talk in that video a little bit about how you might get around that. But so yeah. Anyways, thanks so much, Tom, for the back and forth, and I hope um, you get. You mentioned maybe you'd play the Reds or the Mariners. So if you're doing that, I hope it's going well and you're enjoying that playthrough. I had another commenter. His name is Nicole Pato. Nicole. Sorry, I don't if I'm saying that wrong. Feel free to correct me below. I'm so bad with name pronunciations. So, anyways, he mentioned he gave me just some feedback. He had watched through some videos and said, "Hey, I'm sticking with this. This is good. I play it when I'm doing my own sim or whatever." So I appreciate that. And he mentioned, oh, he watches or he plays RimWorld. He likes that game, and he'd watch a playthrough for that. And so I made sort of more a long form version of that game. And so hopefully he's enjoying those. And I did see his comment, so I hope he doesn't mind how much longer those RimWorld playthroughs probably run than typical people. But I appreciate your comment, man, and hope to talk with you again. Um, Next, uh, uh, Fake Sports Dynasties, Mike Holden, anybody that's on my channel probably only knows me because these guys have said my name before. I don't really put a whole lot out on social media and stuff. I'm not really much of a Twitter person, or and even YouTube is sort of a new. Like I'd never imagined myself doing things like this before. Just didn't have the inclination to put myself out there like that. But so Mike Holden, he did this interview with AussieVillain. A lot of people have probably seen this already. If you haven't, check it out. It's cool. And he did in this interview, at a certain point, he kind of just said something offhanded like, "Hey, Mim, you should do a sports talk show." And I wasn't watching this live, so I was only able to catch it afterwards. And I did hear him say that, and I appreciate it, man. And I am thinking of doing something along those lines, but the problem is if I'm doing something along those lines, I don't want to use somebody else's cartoon. I realized after I threw together that video just as a joke. And it kind of made me laugh, and I was like, oh, I'd like to do that again. I realized I should somehow use images or just some kind of representation of the character that's not somebody's actual work, because that cartoon I used, for instance, for Rex, maybe that's sort of like a famous character, and it would be really strange for somebody that knows that character to see it being used that way. And it might have connotations that I'm not even aware of. Like that might be some despicable cartoon, or it might be something. So I don't even want to go there. So I intend to follow your advice. It just might take me a while until I sort of settle on some way of doing it that's like authentically me, but it still can represent what it's supposed to show, as far as like that being like a loudmouth, kind of fat middle-aged sportscaster. I don't know. So AussieVillain, in that same interview, he was talking more generally, just for people, because in general who are doing YouTube starting out. But I still appreciated it. He said something along the lines of, you'll make lots of mistakes in the beginning. Don't worry about your stuff being perfect or about having everything all correct, because in the beginning you're not going to be very good anyways. And so just kind of go with it and learn as you go. And that was really useful for somebody like me to hear, probably other people too, where it's just like, hey, if you're just getting started with this kind of thing, it's nice to just be able to do it and then go back and look and say, oh, that kind of worked, or oh, that didn't. Like I might hear what I'm doing right now when I'm all said and done with this and say, oh, the music's just way too loud. But now I at least set it up so I can post-process and maybe fix that. So we'll see. And I'm learning these little things, and I really appreciate a guy like this who sort of has some understanding of the YouTube algorithm, and he's kind of doing this thing. It's just cool when somebody like that mentions like, hey, don't worry about it, because everybody starts off a little bit rough, and you learn. And he did. I have been in contact with him, and he said like, hey, if you have any questions, let me know. And so it's really cool, and thank you, and like thank all these guys, and pfholden for putting out those tutorials, because I never would have even played this game that I felt interested enough in to even bother making videos about. So I never would have even bothered with YouTube. So it all is kind of connected, and I really appreciate like all the feedback. I think I touched on most of the people that have contacted me, but there's probably been some others I'm sort of blanking on. And these guys, they're certainly like Mike Holden has a Zephyrs. He's doing like a relegation league with baseball, which is really cool, and he's kind of doing that, and he's sort of doing this. As like I have to say to him as well, you're already doing the sports talk show, this fake sports talk. You're doing it, man. So you don't need me doing some stupid characters when you're essentially you're setting it up to where you can interview people that are doing all these different fake sports leagues, like AussieVillain or whoever. There's lots of other people. But anyways, so I appreciate all the feedback. This has gone a little bit longer than I intended. The very last piece is my the person, the friend on Steam, or the viewer on Steam that was contacting me. He did make a recommendation for this documentary. It's called The Boys of Zimmer, 1989 Chicago Cubs. This is that 89 Chicago Cubs team that got to the playoffs and the Giants knocked them out, but they had a really good year. People were really excited for them. They were, this season, as this documentary shows, it was very up and down. There were like moments they looked like a great team, and other times they looked like the same old Cubs. And the fact they made the playoffs and they had this huge momentum going in, people were very optimistic, and it unfortunately ended in a disappointing loss. But this was Don Zimmer, their manager in that time. I won't get all into him in this video. Maybe a whole other extra bases. I will just talk a little bit about Don Zimmer. But he was a very unorthodox manager. He would call for steals at weird times and do all kinds of strange stuff. He always had a reason for doing it, but it's probably questionable if some of it was a good baseball strategy based on, sabermetrics and analyzing stats and all that kind of stuff. He probably would have been a problematic manager, but I think he's still, he worked all around the league. He's respected. He had some controversy where he charged Pedro Martinez several years later when he was like on the Yankees as a bench coach, I believe, and he went after Pedro, and Pedro just kind of sideswiped, just sort of olayed him, just kind of moved and just tossed him to the side. And Zimmer, being quite old, It's a dangerous thing. But I mean, what was Pedro supposed to do? This old guy, who weighed plenty and probably still was pretty strong, was coming right for him. And so he just sort of sidestepped, and Zimmer fell, but he didn't hurt himself or anything, fortunately. But yeah, this documentaries, it's enjoyable. It's very like cheesy, late 80s, early 90s, like graphics and music, and but it's good. It has some really good stuff about the players, and some like if you're interested in the time period, because like if you found my playthrough because it's 1991, you'd probably like this documentary. So definitely check it out. I've watched about 2/3 of it. I need to finish the last third. And this by the way, this channel, Bash Brothers Videos, it's not a bad one to subscribe to. Real quick, I'll just show. They've got a lot of like baseball, like older baseball related stuff, like Andre Dawson career highlights, a thing about Harry Carey, a thing about WG, and like a Wrigley Field kind of a documentary, a thing about the Cubs. Here's that Boys of Zimmer. There's probably 92 Athletics. This was that really good World Series, I believe. This is the Giants. So some really cool videos if you're looking for stuff from that time period. And I don't really know if this person's active on YouTube anymore or whatever, but it was a year ago the last one was uploaded, so maybe not, but you might subscribe to them, and you never know, something might pop up. So anyways, that was episode 2 of Extra Bases. If you've stuck around this far, thanks so much. Throw a like on the video if you liked it. Hit subscribe and ring the bell if you haven't already. And I will be around again. I appreciate any feedback. Like if you can think of any other good channels like this, or documentaries or older stuff you've seen, if you link it below, I really appreciate something like that. Or if you have a favorite baseball park based on kind of some of the weird dimensions it has, or the quirks, like even modern parks, they have little quirks about them. Maybe I'll do a whole video sometime about park factors and things like that, but I won't really get into that here. But so leave a comment about your favorite park, or quirky things about the park where your favorite team plays, or whatever. Otherwise, thanks so much. See you again, and take it easy.